Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ODPP Café. My name is Anita Onuko. I'm your host for the show. We are in Mombasa. Like I mentioned last week on Friday, we'll be in Mombasa from Monday to Wednesday from 29th of January 2023 to 2nd of February. We are in Mombasa with the Africa Prosecutors Association, and we are here to discuss transnational and organized crime. So like I promised, you're going to have a series of shows that will seek to unpack some of the themes and the sessions that the conference is going to tackle. So I'd like to introduce my guest. My guest is the German ambassador, but I'd like to give him the chance to introduce himself and tell us his name. And of course, yes, karibu to the show, sir.
Asante sana, Anita. Very happy to be with you this
Yes,
morning.
yes.
My name is Sebastian Groth. I'm the German ambassador to Kenya. I arrived in July last year, but I was here already 20 years ago. So I wanted to come back because it's a beautiful country,
Yes.
beautiful people,
Yeah,
politically interesting, and very important also to Germany.
it is. Karibu sana to the show. I wish you
Asante.
could introduce yourself in Kiswahili.
Kidogo tu mimi ni balozi wa Jerumani.
Aha.
Nimekuja
Yes.
in July.
Aha.
7
Mwezi
months
wa
ago.
saba.
Na sasa nimefurahi sana kama mimi fanya kazi hapa kwenye Kenya.
Karim, you've done well.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So I'll just get straight to the point. We are here in Mombasa to meet the prosecutors, Africa prosecutors, and you're discussing transnational organized crime. So maybe just a bit of background. Is it just an African problem, you think, or is it global?
No, transnational crime, of course, is a global problem. And it's getting even worse with what we call globalization.
Yeah.
So more traffic of people, of data, of goods, which is a good thing because it reduces transaction costs and lifts the prosperity of people. But on the other hand, it opens opportunities also for criminals and transnational organized crime.
Yeah.
And that's why we are here.
Yeah.
It's not only a challenge for Africa, I think it's a challenge for Europe, for Asia, for the US, and for the whole world.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. We thought globalization was the ultimate, and now countries have to come back and think on how to mitigate the threats that come with globalization. So Germany has priorities in Kenya, especially when it comes to the justice system. So just an overview of what your priorities are, and if there is some coordination and collaboration in especially in prosecution of transnational organized crime.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we are a long-standing partner of the Office of the Director of the Public Prosecution, but also of the police sector, of DCI. And it's very important because it's part of a comprehensive approach of our development cooperation and of our partnership with Kenya to strengthen good governance, to strengthen the rule of law, to support all the independent but also interlinked institutions that are so important for Kenya, but not only for Kenya. So we are doing this all over the region in East Africa, but also in the whole continent of Africa.
Ah, okay, that's quite good. So then we talk about international cooperation in combating transnational organized crime. How do you see it? Because sometimes you can talk about things in the boardrooms, in these meetings, but practically, how should it work?
I think, like we've seen here in the conference, it's very important that the institutions and the people that run them get to know each other. So networking and the direct contact is a very, very important element. The second element, I think, is the good flow of information between the institutions. And that's where we support very concretely also with the file management, with the data transfer. And the third thing I think is also the convergence of the law systems. What Africa is doing with the African Union and the Vision 2063, I think is extremely important for us, for Europe as a partner, for Germany as a partner, because the political integration goes along with an economic integration, but also with an integration of a space of law and good governance that we are all looking for. And if I may give you the example of Europe, we started the integration process basically 10 years after the Second World War in the 50s. And we are already far ahead, but still not where we should be and
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
We now have a European prosecutor
Oh.
who plays an important role in the judicial system in Europe. But there you see that it is always hard work, and it needs a lot of political will also.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to be here in Mombasa and to see more than 40 representatives of more than 40 countries in Africa that are willing to cooperate and also to exchange their views on a number of issues.
Yeah. So what do you think about the president's speech? Is there enough political will for us here in Kenya to enhance access to justice?
No, I think that was a very substantial and very programmatic
Yeah.
speech. He talked a lot of the value of independent institutions, how important the point of access to justice is, how important an independent judiciary is also for the democratic well-being of a country and of its people. And he was also talking about Africa as a continent of opportunities, but I think this is linked, you know.
Yeah.
You can only seize these opportunities in a stable, fair, democratic and just environment.
Yes,
and
yes.
that's why this cooperation here is so important.
It's important. There's something about illicit financial flows that is part of the theme here. And you're an economist. So I am trying to link that to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
How best can this be managed? Because now there's crypto, there's all this anonymity that comes
Yeah.
with cybersecurity, the cyberspace.
Yeah.
And so it actually supports things like illicit financial flows.
Yeah.
So how should this be managed?
I think this is a very, very important issue, because with also the boom in cryptocurrencies, it is becoming more and more easy for transnational organized crimes to move money from A to B.
Yes.
I think one very, very important point in this context is capacity building. So what we need really is a deep dive into understanding this system, also trying to work on some of the black holes that we have in the regulatory systems. I think information sharing is extremely important, and I know that at least for Germany, I can say we are in close contact with a number of African countries in order to support them, because it's also in our interest to close these loopholes and to get a grip on this very challenging and threatening development. I think it will not be rooted out in the next years or in the next weeks or months. It will take some time, and it's more a marathon than a sprint, but we have to do it. And we are in Kenya, so it's a nation of marathon runners.
Yes,
so
we shall
you're
catch
a good
up.
partner in this.
Yes. Do you think, I'm just thinking right now, that maybe we got blindsided by globalization and technology? We got excited as a people and we were not ready for it. Because when you look at technology again, just like globalization, it has brought about so much good. But now again, there are threats. The other day we were talking about admissibility of evidence. I know you're not a lawyer like me, but technological evidence is so difficult to present in court. So I think one of the challenges maybe they'll talk about is about admissibility. But now the question is, how has Germany, how is it in Germany? How are you handling the threats that come with technology? How are you handling illicit financial flows? Or even just the EU as a whole? Are there things you can learn? Yeah.
So I think what we do is invest as much as possible under budgetary constraints, of course, into the judiciary system. The president was talking about digitization. That plays a very, very important role. Though there is a sort of competition or race between the criminal elements of society and the good side of things, the judicial side. And I think as a society and as political leaders, there is a certain responsibility to support the judiciary in its efforts in order to control what is happening on the dark side of the road. But I agree that what you say about globalization, there are a lot of opportunities. A lot of reduced transaction costs for entertaining goods and people's ideas and datas, but this all has to be also observed and regulated, and even in some cases sanctioned if there is things happening that are to the detriment of the well-being of the people. And these risks are clearly there, and we are doing this on a national level with the German institutions, but we are doing this also in close cooperation with our European partners. There's also OECD, that's a community of more industrialized nations, and they are also doing a lot of benchmarking, of joint learning, information sharing, and I think that's the way we have to go further. Multilateralism, and the president was talking about this. Multilateralism also in the field of the judiciary, of police cooperation, of the prosecutors cooperation is key in this regard.
I like what the EU ambassador said. You are as strongest as your weakest link. So there's a lot of interdependence in as much as there is dependence. Yes.
Now that's true, and so we have to work on the whole value chain of justice. That's why Germany, for example, is also supporting the police, DCI, the prosecutor. Data privacy is a very important field where we are active. So, and we are doing this not alone. We are here together with other donors from the US, from Japan, from the European Union. And I think it's a very, very good partnership that we entertain.
Okay. I am going to have a series of very brief interviews. And I want to thank you for your time, for gracing the show. Like I said, good karma, I hope. Yes.
Thank you very much, Anita, and all the best.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was the German ambassador, just giving us a brief overview of the German priorities in Kenya, and of course, best practices when it comes to enhancing access to justice in the continent and of course in Africa. So on the show, I have two experts, and I want them to introduce themselves. I think the lady first. Karibu Mudao to the show again. So please kindly introduce yourself to the viewers.
My name is Mudao Kimulu, and I am a cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and crisis management lawyer, one of the first formally trained ones in Kenya and Africa. I'm also a former central banker, and I'm a Google Women Tech Maker ambassador. But I'm passionate about enhancing cybersecurity capacity because people can only secure that which they know is a risk.
Alex?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Alex Osunga. I'm the technical lead at iLab Africa, and also a consultant at AGA, and also the head of cybersecurity at Cyber Intel. It's a company that I run.
What's a portfolio?
But my background, cybersecurity, and focusing on digital forensics. But
digital forensics?
Yeah, I do everything cybersecurity focusing.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming for the first time.
Thank you.
Easy. So I don't know how to start this, but I want to talk about the criminal justice sector and electronic evidence. The last time I talked about electronic evidence, I was told that you need, in Kenya at least, you need at least 6 certificates for your evidence to be admissible. Is there a way to make this easier? Because then it means giving electronic evidence is difficult. It's easy to get, but quite difficult to give to take to court. So how best can we do this as a country?
Thank you very much. So when you talk about the certificates, it depends, because number one certification that is required is that the expert who is doing the investigation need to be qualified to be a forensic investigator. So there are so many certifications that you can do for you to qualify, because as you present your report in court, you need to produce a certificate showing that, yes, you're qualified to carry out the investigations. But
just a minute, Alex. Do we have such in Kenya? Digital experts? What did you call them?
There are different certifications by different bodies.
Okay.
But mostly in Kenya, the one that people do is called Computer Hacking Forensics Investigator, offered by the EC Council. But we also have other bodies that offer digital forensics investigation. So either you can get it from anybody, but you need to show that you're qualified to.
I'm just wondering, so that is clear, but then how do we make it easy, Mudel, for prosecutors to take electronic evidence to court? Because looking or getting six certificates so that whatever you have is admissible, yet it could only just be a phone, a video I took, of something going wrong, but for this to be used in court, then there's a whole story behind it. I find it quite tedious and too much. So my question is, how else can this be done?
I'm going to give you a real life scenario. For example, if somebody did an ordinary crime, stole a phone or something from you, they would come and fingerprint and take all that kind of evidence and adduce that in court. It's the same thing in cyberspace. So as much as you're saying there are certifications and there are specializations that people need to do, what the prosecutors need to know is that, first of all, we have a problem in attributing in cyberspace. That is still a bane. You know, trying to catch a cyber criminal is not an easy thing. So if you've nabbed them, you rather make sure that you followed all the procedures that are required to ensure the integrity of your evidence, you know. So if for example, you've gotten digital evidence, you don't tamper with it, you make a copy of it. The same way if you had a document paper, you'd go to a photocopying machine and photocopy it and have the original. So that for digital evidence, there's software like hardware writers which do that, where the original stays intact and you make a copy of it. Because if you try and interfere with that image you're talking about in any way, and this is why qualified people need to be able to do this. The ordinary you and I may not know how to do it. Then when you go to court, their defense will argue it was tampered with, it's inadmissible. So what we need to do for our prosecutors is to train them on the basics of what they need to ask for. When they're going to the investigators, how was your network analysis done? What was the integrity? How was it stored? What was the chain of custody? Then the investigators also need to be trained to know that they're doing these things in a right way. By the time you're getting to court, then it would be admissible, but we can't run away from it. It's something that we need to do. Yeah.
So the technology is meant to make life simple, Alex.
I don't. But just to add on to what she said is that you know, when we are doing investigations, there are quite a number of tools that we use as investigators. Some of these tools are open source. Some of them are proprietary tools that you have to buy. Now, this is what happens. If you buy a tool, or the proprietary tools that we, the investigators, buy, and which are mostly used by the investigation bodies, is that you need to be trained on how to use it. And that is now where so many certifications come up. And we have quite a number of tools that we use outside there. Now, I think for the investigators to reduce the number of certifications that you require for each and every tool, because there are some tools that they say you can't use it if you're not trained and if you're not certified to use it, is sometimes to go the open source way, which they are good tools, but they also have some shortcomings. For the open source tools, they don't require certifications, you just need to learn how to use it. And so when you are presenting your evidence, you need to make it clear whether you used proprietary tools or it was an open source tool, because if the defense lawyer knows that the tool that you use requires you to have a certification, then they're going to challenge that. But sometimes when it comes to proprietary tools, then there's no shortcut. At least you must have the investigators trained on how to use those tools.
So do you train them?
It depends. Even me, there are tools that I don't know how to use. So I only go with what I know how to use.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to jump piggyback off that, this is where it's important to pair people, you know, with different skill sets. You see, I'm a cybersecurity lawyer. I know certain nuances. Yeah. He's a technical cybersecurity expert. So when the prosecutors want to prosecute their case, they bring us together. I come with my cybersecurity law outlook. He comes with his technical cybersecurity outlook. And this is where the prosecutors don't need to work in an island, you know. Cybersecurity is a multi-stakeholder field. So you use each other. There are tools maybe he doesn't know, but his colleague knows. There's stuff I don't know, but my colleague knows. So we all need to come together. And that's why today you heard a lot of people talking about information sharing. Yes. I mean, that cannot be reinforced enough.
Buzzword, actually.
It is. Because no, it's not a buzzword, it's a reality.
No, like everybody here right now is saying information sharing is where we need to perfect.
Two things, information sharing and capacity building cannot be overplayed, because without that, we can't secure the digital realm. The prosecutors can't carry out effective prosecutions.
So last year, was it? We were here in Mombasa, Model. What has changed since the legal framework? in prosecuting cybercrime? Has it changed? Is there improvement?
When we were here last year,
Still talking about transnational organized crime.
you know what? You're throwing me under the bus here, but it's okay. I don't mind.
I like it.
We are still talking, but we need to enhance capacity. So
Yeah.
what has changed maybe is we're in advanced stages. Like I know personally, I'm in advanced stages of developing a program that's going to help the prosecutors,
Okay.
be able to get cybersecurity certification with a local university.
Yeah.
So that's changed from last year because
Yes.
last year after we
were
met,
not there, yes.
everybody was asking, Somother, where can we go? Where can we go? You
Yeah.
know, and you can't do it on your own. You need to have an entity that can be able to offer this capacity training. So on that front, hopefully by the end of this quarter, we'll be at a place where we can be able to say, whether you're in Rwanda, whether you're in Nairobi, there's this program where you can come and understand the basics, like the way I talk. And once you know the basics, you go to the expert here to go into the inner workings.
Yeah.
But we need our prosecutors, we need our bench, like Justice Kiagi was talking about capacity building.
Yes.
When you're bringing this case before the judge, the lady Justice at DPP from Uganda was saying when she doesn't understand, what does she do? She'll be quick to acquit because
she doesn't. She just doesn't want to sweat it.
So and that's a reality of life. Something which you don't know. Even if I don't know something, I just push it aside. I'm like, you know what? I'll deal with that another day.
Yeah.
So we need to build that capacity. But when we're building the capacity, we don't need to overwhelm them.
Yeah.
We just need to give them, the ABC version.
Yes.
Then now the PhD version comes from here.
Alex. You give the PhD version of things.
Yes.
So how do you contribute to the justice sector as AGA, and of course in trying to enhance access to justice?
I think as AGA has been trying to collaborate with the different ODPP, the judiciary, the police to do capacity building sessions across Africa or across the countries that they partner with. So through those capacity building sessions, I think the prosecutors and the lawyers get to learn some of the simple things. But then, I don't know, you see, in cybersecurity, we say, in as much as you learn, if you don't practice, then you forget immediately. So we are not sure whether after the trainings that we do,
this practice.
Yeah. Yes.
But there's so much opportunity for practice, don't you think? I mean, the exposure on the cyberspace alone.
I think lawyers are wary of technology. It's almost like there's a mental block because most lawyers get into the legal world with arts.
Yeah.
So when you tell them technology, they think science. So there's that mental block. I keep on telling them, I am a lawyer doing technology. It is proof.
It's possible.
That it's possible,
Yeah.
So my comprehension of it will not be as detailed as a technical person, but I can have a conversation where I will be able to come and ask the relevant questions.
Yeah.
And that's what the prosecutors need to do when they're working through their cases. What does this case require? What kind of evidence do we need to collect?
Yeah.
How was this evidence collected? How was it stored? What was the chain of custody? Were those network tools or that software used? Was it licensed? Was it open sourced? If it was licensed, was it a valid license?
Although you're talking to a prosecutor who really, whose appreciation of technology is just...
But that is why you come to Mutho and I give you a checklist and I train you.
Yes.
When I train you, I leave you with a checklist where when you're going, you say, evidence adduced, network certificate. We simplify it for you. That's what when I train people, that's what I do. I simplify. By the time I'm walking out of the room, I have left you with a checklist. Now, from that checklist, it gives you the basics of what you need to do because there's no way they're going to remember everything. It's too much and they already have enough on their plates. Now from that checklist, if I've said check if the certificate is valid, you call the expert. How is this certificate valid? And that's why I'm saying multi-stakeholder.
Yes.
So as part of the capacity building I give you those basic checklists that run you through. What do you need to do? How do you need to do it? Then now it guides you.
I feel like we actually have a long way to go in technology because the judge actually raised a very, very valid point.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the investigator is also just trying to understand how to collect electronic evidence. the prosecutor is just learning how to make it admissible or see if it is admissible, right? And the judge, like Lady Justice said, well, they don't get it. How are they expected to adjudicate it?
But in their defense, the laws that we've been practicing all these years have been in existence for centuries.
Okay.
So we've had centuries to perfect and develop them. Cyber law is a brand new area of law. I think
Yeah.
it might be like the 5th or 7th year of law. That's why I'm the only formally trained person,
wow.
because it's
Yeah.
literally brand new, and we're making it up as we go.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years from now, people will say Kinamudo either got it right or got
Or
it
they
wrong.
didn't get it at all. Yeah.
You know, but it's a brand new area of law. So you can't even say, why do they lack the capacity? It's because it's an area of law. And there's a reason why it's been slow to develop.
Yeah.
Laws need to be there to keep society anarchy-free. If I tell you this is the law today, and then tomorrow I change it, there's going to be chaos in
Yeah.
society. So we all assumed our traditional laws would apply in cyberspace.
Yes.
And then now we're like, hang on, this fifth domain,
It can't.
it's not working.
Yeah.
So now that's where cyber law is coming.
Yeah.
So one of the first laws that's been agreed on the international stage is cybercrime law. But cybersecurity is a mammoth field, you know.
Yeah.
It goes into cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, you know, the health sector, I mean, manufacturing,
Yeah.
everything. So it's a whole field. But as prosecutors, they focus on the criminal element. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Alex, the future for Africa, is there hope? We are here discussing transnational organized crime from an African perspective. Is there hope?
Yeah, I think there is hope, but there is hope only if there's collaboration between the different entities,
Yeah.
starting from the police, the prosecution team, and the judiciary. Because I think, according to me, I think most of these cases fail because of the police,
Oh.
because they don't do the right thing when a crime is committed. I talked about the role of a first responder, which is very, very key in an investigation process. Because if they mess up as a first
They're not-
responder,
yeah.
then the whole thing is messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whether you have good prosecutors, good investigators, but if the first responder messes everything, that's it. So we need to train the police to be first responders, because most of they're the first people to be at the scene. So we need to give them those skills to be able to secure the evidence properly. But then still on training as well, I think if we do more trainings or capacity building sessions, then I think Africa is somewhere. They're somewhere.
They're going somewhere.
Yeah, we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we wind up, what's your expectation out of this meeting, out of your panel discussion, actually, for both of you? What is your expectation?
I'm hoping that next year when we meet, we're going to be able to say there's been a lot more collaboration, there's been a lot more capacity building, there are more people in the room not looking at me like I'm talking Greek.
Yes.
When
Should I
I'm-
even just use animations for us?
If I had time, I would have. It's just time was
Yeah.
limited. But yeah, people will be able to understand basic technology. And the other thing, we need to do it. It's not we can't drag our feet on it.
Yeah.
Because the government is really accelerating digital transformation. You know, we're embracing digital transformation because in cybersecurity, we tend to focus on the negatives, but there's a lot of positives
Yeah.
to the tech space. You know, it makes our lives easier. It's able to curb corruption and a lot of these things. So as much as we're accelerating digital transformation, we can't have the securing, which is the cybersecurity of that digital transformation lagging behind, because the more you transform, the wider the threat landscape becomes. And the cyber criminals have turned their focus to Africa. We're being hit harder than the Western worlds. An organization in Africa on average could be hit over 1,800 times. In the West, it's maybe 1,100 times. You know, we're losing over $4 billion to cybercrime in Africa. That's more than the GDP of 12 African countries. And for some of them, it's double their GDP, you know? Look at cyberbullying. We were talking about sexual offenses and child crime. The suicide age is dropping to 7. A 7-year-old committing suicide because of online bullying, you know? So we need to move fast. You know, there's a hare and the tortoise. We need to be the hare. There's no time for
We're
tortoise
done.
in this. We're
We're done
done.
being tortoise
Yeah,
about
yeah, we're
it.
done being tortoise about it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that government services are now going digital, like
Yeah.
it is now
Yeah.
in Kenya. But there's debate that we are actually just moving corruption to go digital. Are we ready?
Well, cyber crime has evolved to the digital space. You know,
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies. With the evolution of cryptocurrencies, they go into the darknet, and you can
Yes.
purchase illegal services and
It's
do
anonymous.
things anonymous. You can buy NFTs, which are really good for our sports guys and our athletes. Even Akina Kipchoge have done them, but there are other nefarious characters using it for other ways. Obviously, corruption is turning digital
Yeah.
because you can get it. You can be paid in crypto, for example, Bitcoin, and then off-ramp it into fiat currency, you know, which is your regular cash elsewhere. So what we need to do, because we don't have this in place, is actually create virtual asset laws in Kenya. And that's something that the Financial Action Task Force, which is a body that deals with AML and anti-money laundering and CFT, one of their recommendations is for us to look into virtual assets. So even here locally, we need to start looking at virtual assets and what we need to do about them.
What's the expectation, Alex?
Just to add on to what you said, that the government, we are going digital or we are going online, but then in as much as we go online, the government should do everything with the security in mind. As you develop a system, you need to do it with the security. There's something we call in cyber security, it's called DevSecOps. Development, security, and operations. So that as systems are being developed, we have the whole team. We have a software developer, we have a security person, and we have an operations person working together to make sure that we have security from the word go. And then the other thing I think that government need to do, and I've seen in other Western countries they do it, is to give us the hackers. I hack. But then we do not have a platform to report. So sometimes I believe if I hack, or I don't call it hacking, but I do what is called threat hunting. I look for problems. Yes.
A penetration tester,
It's
a
just-
white hacker. He's a
just
good one.
hacking.
So there's something we call threat hunting, is looking for problems in systems, and then you report
Yeah.
to the respective organizations. But in Kenya, we do not have that platform. It's only Safaricom that has a platform where you do, it's called a bug bounty. A bug bounty is where you go into a system, look for weaknesses, write a report.
You see the fault lines.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then give them that feedback so that they can put in the
They
correct
can protect
measures.
themselves.
Yeah.
So I think in Kenya, for the government systems, they need to have a platform where, as we do, because look at, for example, let me give you an example of KRA. Today, if I go in and find a fault within that or a weakness in the system, where will I go and report? Because the DCI will come for
You
me.
shall be arrested.
I'll keep quiet.
Yes.
I have the information,
Yeah.
but I'll keep quiet.
Yeah.
The next day, they are hit and they don't know where to start. It's
Yeah.
not that we don't have the information that the system is weak, but it's only that we fear reporting because of being arrested.
Yes.
So I think we need to have that platform where security professionals can go in, hunt for, do what we call threat hunting, and share that report
Yeah.
with the
This will
government
help.
so that they take appropriate action
Yeah.
to protect those systems. I think if we are given that platform, Kenya will be good to go.
Would be good.
And then I think just to piggyback on that, you can do all the technical threat action, but over 90% of cyber incidents are due to the human factor. So the government needs to do enhanced cyber hygiene awareness, which is, these are the best practices you use every time you go online. We need to train everybody from the presidency to your mamamboga. Anybody who goes online needs to know what are the best practices that I need to use every time I go online to secure this. Because if you're a prominent member, a CS or something, and you access documents on a device that's not secured or use free Wi-Fi, you know, that could be a way to get into our secure systems. So this cyber hygiene training needs to begin from the highest levels
to the lowest.
to the lowest levels, so that we're all aware. Because we can invest on the systems, we can do everything, but unless we train our people and we're the weakest factor, we're not going to go very far.
Human beings are the weakest link
Yeah,
in
we
the
are.
organization.
Either malicious or accidental, they're the
Oh,
weakest
yes.
link.
Malicious mostly.
Accidental,
There's
because
some, but
sometimes
accidental,
innocently
yeah,
you
sure.
don't know,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
You could be, I know a particular incident of an institution where somebody was on a matatu going home and accessed the free Wi-Fi in the matatu, and the institution had a serious breach.
What?
It was innocent. There was no malice in it. But you see, of course, like you say, they'll be picked up, you know, whatever, they'll be in court, but they were not aware. That's that cyber hygiene training. So we need to train it so it's so second nature. You know, like when COVID came, we were all wearing our masks. Or even right now, if the fire alarm went, we all know to exit stage left. Forget about cameras, we're all out of here, you know? It needs to be so second nature to us. And how can it be second nature? You need to keep practicing it, reinforcing it, messaging. And there's a campaign we began last year, and I'm hoping it's going to be spread wider, because we developed the first cyber hygiene curriculum for this end of the world. So hopefully that will be rolled out.
I just want to emphasize on what she said. I want to give you a scenario of a pen test I did. I won't mention the organization. Last year, towards the end of last year. So
you hacked, Alex. Did you say?
No, I didn't. I was doing a pen test. Pen test is like, it's ethical hacking. You're
Don't
called,
you worry. I'm just like, you know, there's a time we went somewhere with the DPP, and then somebody introduced himself as a what is it called?
Ethical hacker.
Ethical hacker.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. Continue.
So yeah, ethical hacking or pen test is where you are called by the organization to just check their systems and see where the weaknesses are. So one of the objectives of that pen test was what I would call social engineering. There's a term we call social engineering. It's just about playing with the human mind and gaining access to the system.
You enjoy it, Alex.
And what makes us happy, hackers, is when you're able to break into a system. We enjoy what we do. So what happened is that it was towards the end of the year, and I knew that in this organization there are bonuses that are being given. So what I did, because it was one of the objectives of what I was doing, I was told now, I sent emails to all the mid-level managers and said that there's bonus that is going to be given. Now you need to give us your details. Click on this link to give us your details. The email went out. What I did is I created an email that is similar to the HR's email, right? And when I sent, half of them clicked, and at least some reported, but half clicked on the link because it was the subject of the email was bonus.
I don't know if it's a Kenyan company, but you don't tell me bonus is a Kenyan and I ignore the mail, man.
It's a Kenyan company,
but it's not just in Kenya, it's around the world. That
so
social engineering he's talking about, we call it phishing. So it's almost like fishing for your fish. And I actually call it as one of the ishings because there are different types of ishings. That email is one of the largest ways around the world that people are being, systems are being compromised. They can also call you. That's when we call it vishing. You get a phone call, your kid is sick, and you know they were on a school trip there and whatever, send money, you know, or something, you know, SMSing, smishing. You get a random text, you're a jackpot winner, and click here like he has done, you know, looking for love for Valentine's, catfishing. So the issues, that's part of that cyber hygiene awareness we're talking about. Now, if that company had been trained on cyber hygiene, they would have known that's a likely phishing thing, and that 50% maybe would have been reduced to lower.
All right. I want to end. Thank you so much. I think we've learned something. There's need for cyber hygiene, training, awareness,
and training.
So the next level for Africa is cyber hygiene. The next level for Kenya is cyber hygiene. We all need to catch up and stop being tortoise now. It's time to be hares, right? We need to catch up because the world is changing very fast, and now there's a cyberspace for us to worry about. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your insights. I promise it will be short.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it. So I'll invite you again next time, and I hope by the next time we'll have something to report on. You didn't tell us your expectation about the conference. What do you expect? What do you want out of this?
Okay, I think for me is everywhere I go, because I do these conferences quite a number of times in Africa. But just to see people practicing what we say, let them walk the talk.
Yeah.
Let us not come and drink tea and go back.
Yeah.
Let them practice what
Yes.
we say. Yeah.
Good. Sawa. Thank you so much and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching. That was about cybersecurity, a brief talk with experts. And I hope that you've learned something. I have learned. We need to walk the talk, like Alex says, and we need to also practice some cyber hygiene. So remember, we are still at the annual general meeting and conference, the 16th annual general meeting and conference of the APA, and we are discussing transnational organized crime. And I'd want to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves. And because I have one gentleman, I will give the boy child an opportunity to do it first. So Sang, just go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you very much, Anita. My name is Michael Sang. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions Office. Also the Head of Counterterrorism and Transnational Organized Crime. Thank you.
Karibu sana to the show. Must be the second time, right?
Yeah, that's
yes.
right. This is the second time.
All right. Alma as well, second time?
Yes.
Karibu sana, introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you, Anita, for having me. My name is Alma Wanyama. I'm a Senior Technical Advisor with the EU AML CFT SK project.
Quite a name.
Yes.
Karibu sana to the show. And for the first time, my great privilege to have you introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Nyawira. I am a legal and security expert with specialty in the law of war and human rights law. And I am the director of the National Counterterrorism Center.
Okay. You had a very interesting discussion today about terrorism and counterterrorism, and everybody was just glued to what you're saying. So that means it's actually a very emotive and topical subject that you must deal with as a country and as a region. So you had a very, very interesting presentation, Dr. Nyawira, and like I said, that I just want you to maybe just give us that journey that leads somebody from just being me then to a violent extremist.
All right, thank you, Anita. The journey of terrorism does not start with one day someone waking up, taking a weapon and deciding to kill people. It is a process. It is a process of radicalization. That is, you're moving from what we know as the mainstream, what we majority of people believe in, to an extreme ideology that allows you to carry out violence as a means of enhancing or executing that ideology. So it's the process of radicalization. It starts with there's someone who will get an asset mind and tell them about this ideology, glorify it, make them own it, feel like they're part of a journey, they're part of a bigger group, give them identity of an in-group, that we belong here, we are oppressed for this reason, and it is our turn now to amend the wrongs that have happened to us. So this person, when they start with the radicalization, then they move to believing that radicalization. So they become extremists because they are moving from what is the mainstream. Then with time, with their indoctrination now and being reminded of this in-group, a duty to revenge against what has happened, they become violent. They're encouraged to use violence as a tool. And so the execution of that violence is what is the terrorist act now. This extremist takes up whatever weapon and executes violence and commits a terrorist act. So we at the National Counterterrorism Center are intervening in that journey because, traditionally, or how violent extremism has manifested itself is through a terrorist attack. And when the terrorist attack happens, what do you expect is a response? It is counterterrorism because there are people that have planned to kill and they have actually killed, and so you must come back and get them. But ideally, now that we know this that is with us here, we should be starting from the radicalization process. Why are people being radicalized? And drain the available pool of people willing to be radicalized. What are the motivating factors? What people call the push and pull factors. So we go back and look at what narratives do these recruiters tell their recruits. And so we start addressing that from the community level. So National Counterterrorism Center stands in between security and communities to enlighten communities on this threat and what it really means for our country, and that the people that are attacking us, in fact, the past attacks, there has always been the Kenyan component. So that means it is our children.
Yes.
Right? Why are our children going, believing in other people's ideologies and then coming to kill us and then leave so much devastation, not just for the people directly who die or are maimed or who lose loved ones, but also for their own relatives, because you wouldn't want your child to be the one who kills 100 people. It's something you live with. So the center, we do a lot of capacity building and also work closely with the communities to enlighten them, and also work with security officers to let them understand the importance of preventing violent extremism and also countering it where it has happened within the rule of law, because otherwise then it becomes a vicious cycle that the people who feel oppressed by systems will themselves become violent extremists, and it will never stop. We'll be chasing our own tail.
All right. So I don't know, Sang, in the course of your duties, what have you found to be the main cause of this radicalization? Is it religion? Is it poverty? Or is it a mix of both? Because when you go back to the community, like Dr. Nyawira is saying, you can't understand how our own children decide now they want to kill us. So is it a factor of poverty? Is it a factor of religion, or is it both?
Thank you very much, Anita. I think that's a very good question. And as I just heard Dr. Nyawira earlier go into the aspect of radicalization being a phased process, and there's a cocktail of so many factors, causative factors that affect our youth to go that direction of violent extremism. Some of these causative factors are a myriad, a multiplicity of issues: socio-economic challenges, dysfunctional families, identity crisis. There's no one single factor that you can depend on. There's so many factors depending on each, and every case is it's on a case-by-case basis. Every case is unique as it comes, and this is what we are seeing from a prosecutorial point of view.
Okay, thank you so much. So Alma, I don't think there is a way. The government agencies and other agencies need to support each other. There's need for interagency and intergovernment collaboration. So in the morning you had a very interesting presentation about the work you do in East Africa. So maybe just give us a bit of an overview about that.
Thank you, Anita, for the question. When you talk about terrorism, and especially terrorism financing, no agency can work in silo when tackling this crime. It's complex in nature. So it needs all agencies nationally. It needs collaboration and coordination of all agencies involved when it comes to fighting terrorism and terrorism financing to assist the investigators and the prosecutors. And for this to happen, there are laws in place, legislation is there, and the only, let me not say challenge, but a way of improving the coordination and collaboration of these national agencies, like what, I'll give an example of what we did in Kenya and what we are doing in Tanzania, was to bring agencies together to come up with guidelines to guide the agencies when in issues of investigation and prosecution of terrorism and terrorism financing cases. Because each agency plays a role. It's a puzzle. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. So each agency plays a role when it comes to terrorism and terrorism financing. The question is, at what point does your mandate allow you as an agency to come in this fight against terrorism and terrorism financing? So in that regard, we've done guidelines, interagency guidelines on city and terrorism. In Kenya, we completed the process and the guidelines was launched and adopted by agencies. And now we are doing the same for Tanzania. And hopefully we'll do this in more countries.
There'll be coordination.
Coordination, because apart from it being a national threat, it's a transnational threat.
Yes.
You're only as safe as your neighbor.
Yes.
So we'll also do this to other countries as well.
Quite interesting what globalization has done to us. So you're either as You're only as safe as your neighbor.
Yes.
Yes. But now, Dr. Nyawira, there's the issue of cyber threats, cyber terrorism. Is there anything we're doing as a country? Is there anything we're doing as a region to counter cyber terrorism? Because it comes with a lot of anonymity and it's just dark. We don't know. So are there strategies? Are there plans that to counter cyber terrorism?
Anita, you raise a very important point at where we are in time. Because everyone now is on smartphone,
Yes.
including our very small children. And it's important to let people know that the same way we are using technology to advantage, the same way terrorists have gone into technology.
Yeah.
So what are we seeing now? Terrorists are actually using online gaming to get recruits. And we assume gaming is just gaming.
Gaming, yes.
But there's a lot of disguise in that gaming. And so they attract you with a game, but eventually it's like a process. It's step by step to the content they want you to see. And so we are dealing with very facile minds. They are children who are at the place of identity. So they are looking for information, and there's a lot of information online. So and also now you see with what is happening, they will take advantage of them. For example, money apps that are there to crowdfund. It's crowdfunding for terrorist operations. There's also now, of course, now the 3D printing. We will be printing guns at some point in time, if not now, and also the UAVs. There's so much as the technology grows, and we all want to take advantage of technology to help make our lives more efficient. The same way terrorists will use them too.
Yeah.
So even thinking about what they can do of their sabotage of infrastructure.
Yes.
So it's very important first that, and I want to throw this challenge to everyone who has a child at home. Please, you are the first person who sees the interaction. You are actually the person facilitating the interaction because you've given them. Like, please be aware that there are so many people prying online for children. And for my case, it's important to notice the terrorists are out there. And like I said, they have simplified terrorist attacks. So traditionally, we would say that if you're radicalized, then we'll see you move to a combat theater. It's not necessary. So if he's so convinced that his neighbor next door I should hate them because they look different from me, what will stop them from taking a knife and just going and attacking that neighbor? Or maybe take a car and ram into some crowd in a public space. So first of all, it behooves us to be diligent in what we do ourselves, even as adults over there, especially the younger ones. But also government has strategies, of course, to check online, because the internet, even as we are adopting it, there has to be security systems, because the internet can really expose anybody, government infrastructure, and so there are measures in there to ensure that you also detect the signatures of possible what we call the lone wolf attacks, the lone wolf attackers, or then the pack wolf attackers, people that come together and decide we can do this, or a person who just arises, and we've seen them, I think, all over the world, just arise, take a gun, and go and kill. Most of the time, because they also want some publicity, they leave a signature. So it's important for us to keep tracking these signatures, so that you know that there's someone who's talking something hateful, and someday he might just arise.
They might just actualize
and also push the law to take it. Because when if for example, you posted something and I arrested you, there are legal provisions.
The frameworks,
what about the admissibility of that evidence? What are we doing as legislators, as all players in the criminal justice system, to make sure that the law can take care of the now? I don't like calling it future, because it's now of the criminal we are facing now when it comes to cybercrime.
Well, quite interesting. I had a chat yesterday about cyber security, and clearly the concept of legal frameworks came up, that we need to actually, as a country and as a region, have proper frameworks to deal with cyber threats. Now, something else that Dr. Nyawira brought up on stage is about alternatives to justice. Are there alternatives to justice when it comes to terrorism cases? Because I saw diversion. I think there's plea bargain, if I heard clearly. Do they work in terrorism cases?
Yes, yes, they work in terrorism cases, and they have worked before. First and foremost, before I even delve into that question, I would quickly mention that plea negotiations with terror suspects does not mean we negotiate. ODPP Kenya negotiates with terrorists. That is something that should be clear. We do not negotiate with terrorists.
Oh, that's clear.
These are alternatives to prosecutions that are provided within the law. And we are employing some of these measures to save some of our youth from getting into violent extremism. Remember, it is a phased process: radicalization, extremism, then violent extremism. So before they get violent, that is when the alternatives to prosecutions play a very fundamental role. Once a youth is seen to be radicalized or recruited by a particular extremist group, this can be seen in many ways, through intelligence or through investigation, through tip-offs from the community. That individual is identified and apprehended. During the interview process, law enforcement officers at the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit are going to get insights into the kind of individual that we are dealing with. In many cases of youth, they are seen not to be very, very ideologically driven, no terrorist act, no past criminal record. And at that point is when we involve the National Counterterrorism Center, who we work very closely with. And we involve a forensic psychologist who would also be a part of the interview process. During that interview process, the forensic psychologist has a very fundamental role to talk to the suspect in a manner that, of course, employing their scientific tools to try and see what are some of the indicators, what are some of the causative indicators that led the youth to go astray. During that process and follow-up interviews that will take quite a period of time, the forensic psychologist will come up with a psychosocial assessment report. The psychosocial assessment report is a very fundamental report because these are some of the things that we agreed when we launched the interagency guidelines, when we were working with stakeholders, all within law enforcement and even NCTC and even state and non-state actors that were involved during that period. We agreed that this will be a tool, a very important tool, objective assessment of terror suspects at that particular point of radicalization before they shift into violent extremism. Can we save this youth? Can we give this youth another chance? Instead of pushing them off the cliff, can we give them another chance so that they can take advantage or rather realize some of the alternatives to justice, as you say, like plea bargaining or diversion? I would quickly comment about diversion. At that point that we see that he is not so much radicalized or exposed to this kind of content, we would recommend for a diversion program. And after recommending for diversion program, that is when we work very closely with NCTC, because NCTC runs the disengagement, rehabilitation, and reintegration program. We have seen gains, we have seen successes, we have seen some of the youth turn a new leaf. When they go into the program, they choose a different path onto their lives. So we are seeing alternatives to prosecution in terrorism also working.
All right.
We are seeing the transformation of youth from moving into extremism, and they are coming back into the society.
Okay.
They wish to be reintegrated in the society and to build the nation just as like many other youth who are law abiding.
All right, interesting. Alma, finally, have you, in the course of work you're doing in TZ, you're also trying to launch the terrorism and terrorism guidelines, the same thing we did in Kenya?
Yes.
Are the challenges the same? Because again, you're talking about cross-border prosecution, and then are you seeing at some point we can actually collaborate in terms of prosecution of these cases in the capacity building you're doing right now?
Yes, the challenges are the same, because the key challenge is working in silos when it comes to terrorism and terrorism financing, and that is what the guidelines cures. But the good thing also about the process of coming up with the guidelines is that agencies come and they talk to each other.
Okay.
They present about the mandates of their institutions, and you find that in the forum, they might not know about even the existence of these agencies, you know. So the fact that they've been brought together and they are talking to each other, they are able to share a lot. And I remember the conversation that comes up a lot is that the first thing an agency will say is, I don't even understand why I'm here. I don't think I deal with the
I should be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the first workshop, we usually have an awareness raising workshop.
Yeah.
At the end of the 5 days, they say, you know, I actually didn't know I play a part when it comes to journalism and terrorism financing. When it comes to collaboration between Kenya and Tanzania, I think that is something that has been
ongoing. It's there.
Yeah, it's there. It has been going on. Just that now when you have this national approach, it also helps when it comes to the cross-border approach when it comes to these cases.
So do you also have institutions like banks in these meetings?
Yes, definitely. In Kenya we had Central Bank.
Yeah.
In Tanzania we also have Tanzania.
Their bank.
Tanzania Bank of BOT.
Bank of Tanzania. Yes. Okay. Dr. Nyawira, you gave also, I really liked your presentation, as you can tell. There's a lady you put on the screen talking about the son. So what happens when I now come and, what happens to a lady like that now? Because they also are disturbed. They are disturbed by the fact that their child caused so much death. Is there anything you do for such parents?
We reach out to them. And we want them to heal because they
need healing
scars, and hear their story.
Yeah.
Because you can see, when you talk to them, they're sorry that this happened, and they carry a burden that their child did it.
Yeah.
And the question you ask yourself as a parent is, where did I fail? So we give them a chance to offload.
Yeah.
We talk to them. We have psychologists that we work with. And we give them sessions where they to offload.
Yeah.
But also important, we want them to tell other parents that it can happen to anybody. It's not because she was a bad parent that this thing happened. It can happen to anybody. And what she goes back in retrospect and says, what should I have seen? Or I saw these things. What
are the red flags?
Yeah, what are the red flags that maybe I ignored? Either because maybe, we all want to believe our children are good people.
Yeah.
Or because I didn't know what to do. So we want her to do that, to empower other parents, so that when you see you're not alone, you know where to reach out to and say, I think there's something happening, without the fear that your child will be stigmatized, because there's a sort of stigma that comes with it.
Yeah. All right.
And also she that particular one wanted a chance to meet the victim, the surviving one, just to tell them, I'm sorry on behalf of my child. So of course she's not the one who committed the crime, and she shouldn't carry that baggage, but she carries it. So you give her a chance to heal the way she wants to.
Yeah, she's 1 in a million. So I want to end the show. It was meant to be very brief. Thank you so much for your insights. And of course, you can catch your presentation on, we had it on Facebook and on YouTube. I think for anyone who wants to catch it, was very interesting. So thank you so much for coming to this show.
Thank you.
I have seen you guys. Just hold. Thank you so much, everyone who was listening. We have had an interesting discussion on terrorism and terrorism financing. As you've heard, it can be anyone, so you best know at what point you get pulled into this thing. It could be through online gaming, online things you do, the things you do online or your children do online. You can be a parent to maybe a child who's exposed, and you need to know what to do or where to go. So thank you once again for joining us. Thank you so much. God bless.